computer. All right, family, it's your brother Assad back again with another quick video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so that you'll be notified when we drop new content on this channel. And secondly, in terms of housekeeping, I have to thank my South African family for all the love and support you guys have shown this family, shown this channel, my family, myself, my children. We definitely appreciate it. And to all the other supporters of this channel, we definitely thank you. We have a phenomenal conversation that is about to take place. I am super duper excited about having this young man on and being able to tell his story. I just think, first of all, his whole story is phenomenal. Not just the time he spent in SA, but even before he got to SA. And it's another example of that history and how cultural ties cannot be broken. They may be hidden, they may be disguised, but they cannot be broken. And so without further ado, I'm going to let this young man introduce himself, tell us who he is, what he does, where he's from, and we're going to get into this conversation. Brother Jabari.
All right. Yeah, so I'm Jabari. I'm a senior civil engineering student at North Carolina A&T State University. For those who do not know, that's an HBCU, which is a historically Black college. We are the largest historically Black college in terms of enrollment. We graduate the most Black engineers. I do civil engineering, also with a minor in physics. Other things that I do is I do TikTok videos connecting African Americans with the continent, especially the country of Liberia. I do videos on YouTube on the BAIO Afrikstan, where we talk about this and we elaborate more on connections with Africa. So we got members in Nigeria, Ghana, etc. And I am Gullah Geechee, and I will get into that more as Assad asks more questions.
I want to know more about this social media connecting of so tell me more about that, and what do you guys do, and how has it been going?
Yeah, so it's been going really well. We are planning to take a trip to the continent later on this year. We'll be going to Liberia to commemorate the bicentennial. So for African Americans, West Africans who are not aware, in 1822, the first African Americans arrived in Providence Island, and that was where the beginning of what is today the capital of Monrovia is in Liberia. So they're having a huge festival. They want African Americans to come. John Amos went to Liberia. Michael Blackson went to Liberia, and they want as many of us to come to the country. The Neymar Institution is even trying to lobby for citizenship and give special incentives to African Americans. So that's what we're doing. Our organization, we focus on the connection between African Americans and Liberia. So I'll focus on Liberian history, the Liberian presidential series, debunking myths. And I've had on the BAIO Afrikstan channel, on our YouTube channel, we've had historians and authors come in and we've done interviews. We've done interviews with Liberian YouTubers, and we really break things down so that we can change the narrative, because I think changing the narrative is such an important aspect, because if you don't change the narrative, people have this perception about you.
Man, listen, I'm first of all, I'm trying to turn my phone off so that it doesn't ring, but that is phenomenal. When you said Liberia, it made me think of Edward Blyden, and I think he actually went to Sierra Leone first, but then he went to Liberia first, or he went to Sierra Leone. And I studied him because he ended up becoming Muslim, right? So this guy has a fascinating story, but we don't hear many Black Americans talking about Liberia, and it is a place that was, I mean, there's some conflict there because it was set aside for us.
It's actually interesting.
Go ahead, tell us about it.
So one of the things that people make the mistake is they think Liberia was just this African Americans became the white man's mentality, and that's not the case. I was actually on the interview of an historian. I'm gonna actually flash some books. So this is Citizenship and Nationality in Liberia from C. Patrick Burroughs. I did an interview with C. Patrick Burroughs, and then we have From Virginia Slave to African Statement. This is Hilary Teague. He was the author of Liberia's Declaration of Independence. And we also have Between Salty Forest and the Cola Forest, another book. And so what some of this stuff people may not be aware of is Liberia was home not only to Edward Wilmot Blyden. If you've ever heard of Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, He advocated going to Liberia. Maya Angelou originally was supposed to be in Liberia, and then she went to Ghana after
Okay.
circumstances had happened. Liberia, Bill Russell used to go visit Liberia every year annually when he was playing basketball in the 60s. Liberia was one of the first countries to abolish the slave trade when they gained their independence in 1847. The Garvey movement was the center of it. So
Oh,
you had
brother.
Amy Jock Garvey, you had Amy Ashwood Garvey. They all went there. They had close connections with the president, William B.S. Tubman. Marion Makeba from South Africa stayed in Liberia. Other South Africans who were fighting apartheid stayed in Liberia, and they educated at the University of Liberia. So there's a lot of Pan-African history in Liberia that doesn't get talked about. And I
Yeah.
actually did an interview yesterday on Liberian TV Network where I talk about reading the letters of African Americans who wanted to go to Liberia but never had the funds, or African Americans that had galvanized to try to establish settlements in Liberia, but they didn't have access to money. They reached out to the president, President Hayes, and they just weren't able to get the necessary funds for them to go over there. And those could have been your ancestors that writ those letters, that organized, but never had the opportunity to go there.
Okay, here's my question is how, in your opinion, because you seem to be an expert on this, brother, in your opinion, how well known was Liberia, a century ago or even, 40, 50 years ago? Because I think now if we walked up to the average Black person, they would not know that there was a country on the continent of Africa founded by formerly enslaved African Americans. They would not know it. They would not know that the streets in Freetown are named after, like, you know,
Yeah, Freetown was founded by Thomas Peters, who was an African American from North Carolina.
right.
He fought for the British. He went to Nova Scotia. They were not happy, so they went to England. They created the Committee for the Relief of the Black Poor, and then they went to Freetown in 1788. Now there were that first settlement got destroyed, and then they came back in 1792 with some other African Americans, and the Jamaican Maroons would come afterwards.
Okay.
In terms of your question about Liberia 40, 50 years ago, it was really well known. Liberia was, if you've ever heard of the Monrovia Group. So if you've ever heard of the Monrovia Group, that's what led to the African Union. The African Union came from the Organization of African Unity, which came from the Monrovia Group. So there was the Monrovia Group, there was the Casablanca Group. Monrovia, of course, was led by Liberia. So Liberia birthed the African Union. It was a founding member of the United Nations. Liberia was well known for the fact that, like I said, Garvey was talking about this. Garvey actually sent people to Liberia. And of course, people say, well, it got denied. It got denied because of colonial powers. So they were threatening to invade Liberia. And so Liberia was stuck in this position. If it gave the land to Garvey, it would have risked invasion. And so if you go to Liberia today, and we're planning to go to Liberia in middle of the year, where Firestone Rubber Plantation is, that Firestone is, that land is what was supposed to have been given to Garvey and his UNIA members.
Wow. And that's the land with like a 1,000-year lease or something crazy like
Yes,
that.
99 years.
Yeah, wow. Oh man, this is a wealth of information, brother. So, but so it was well known. But do you think, as I always say, if you watch my videos, the everyday people knew about Liberia? Because I'm pretty sure that if I those of us who are learned, those of us who read, those of us who are actually interested in Pan-African ideas, we're going to know about Liberia. But I'm most there's Black folk here who are still denying that we are African. So I'm wondering if how many people actually knew about this. It's not a question that you could necessarily answer, but it seems
I would say not many know. They may have heard of Liberia, and they may have gotten like some basic like perceptions or stereotypes about Liberia, but they really, really don't know how Liberia was created, how it came to be as an independent nation from the 1880s to the 1920s. Like I said, I've been doing this for half a decade. I've been doing it since I was in high school. So I know Liberian history, spoken to the historians, been on Liberian networks. I know Liberian history through in and throughout. So the average Black American doesn't know much about Liberia. I did a TikTok video on the African American president, Joseph Jenkins Roberts, who was from the state of Virginia. He was the first African American president of any country. And there's a book that was actually written about
It's a
Joseph Jenkins
history, man.
Roberts being the first African-American president in history. And he was elected in 1848. And then you had another African-American president, Stephen Allen Benson. You had another African country called the Republic of Maryland, which is known as Maryland in Africa, which is why today it's known as Maryland County. So all this stuff is not being taught to African Americans.
Wait. You gotta break that down because that one hit me right there. There was another African country founded by African Americans on the continent of Africa, and it was called what?
It was called the Republic of Maryland, also known as Maryland in Africa and the independent state of Maryland, which today is known as Maryland County. So if you go to Maryland County, you will see Harper. There's a place called Little Baltimore Street in Maryland County. It's literally was founded, the Republic of Maryland was founded by African Americans. Now, people need to make this disclaimer, and I did a video in response to talking about Freetown and Monrovia. We need to break down terminology. There's a difference between founded and discovered. We did not discover the territory of Liberia, but the founding, the establishment of the modern nation state, the modern encompass of what we consider today Liberia, was started by African Americans with the help of their indigenous allies, because people often make this conflict of African Americans and indigenous as if the indigenous Liberians didn't have their own countries. Even when African Americans came there was the Congo Confederation, there was the Kingdom of Koya, there was the Bassa Kingdom, there were many confederacies and alliances that were being made. There was the slave trade going on, there were war going on. So it wasn't just this straight black and white Americo African American, and we need to break that term down because they're not the same. Americo, Liberian, Congo, Kui, they're not the same thing. So all of that is what created modern day Liberia.
Okay. Now, we're going to get back to Liberia, but I want to jump into your history, your culture, your heritage. Now, you say you are what? How do you say it?
Gullah Geechee.
Now, what is that? What is a Gullah Geechee?
So for those who do not know, for South Africans and other African
can I jump in?
Sisters, yeah.
Can I jump in right quick? I want to say, because I asked you what a Gullah Geechee. Now, there's a movie with Denzel. I think is it Cry Freedom? And the term Geechee was used by Northern blacks to as a derogatory term. Do you know that was the first time I heard that? It was used as a derogatory term in that movie. It was he was a light-skinned brother from the North, and it's about being in the military. I can't think of the name of the movie, but he was like, "Oh, yo, Geechee boys," and they're embarrassing us because they were from the South, right? Mm-hmm. That was my first time hearing that. I had to go and study to know what this Geechee Gullah or Gullah Geechee life was about. And I told you I did meet the queen at one time. So I'm sorry I had interrupted you, brother. Please tell us.
Oh, no, it's good. It's good.
Please tell us.
Conversation. So for those who do not know, Gullah Geechee is a specific group of African Americans who lived in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and the northern coast of Florida. So at the cutoff would be Jacksonville. And so what makes us unique is that during that time, during slavery, when we were brought to the Americas, that part of the coastline of South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida, that was a majority Black region. It was a heavily Black region, majority Black for most of its history. So due to the fact that it was majority Black and you had the islands there, the white overseers and the slave masters didn't oversee us as much as on other areas in the South. So what ended up happening is we were able to preserve much of our African cultures the way that most other African Americans who, let's say, were slaves in Tennessee or in Mississippi and Alabama didn't have that luxury. So if you're Gullah Geechee, our language sounds a lot like Creole in Sierra Leone. So we say like the word woman, Oman, or we have the word Bukra, which means white man. You have similar grammar. So example one, I heard when they said we're very good, we say good, which is derived from Wola. So there's a lot of things from the Gullah Geechee language that stems from African culture. Jambalaya is some. The word kumbaya, it comes from Gullah Geechee. So we have the story of the bearded rabbit and all of that. You have hoodoo. a religious spiritualism that is derived from African culture. The word Gullah in itself is of African. It could mean Angola or it could mean the Gullah people. So me coming from Gullah Geechee, I've always had close ties with my African heritage and African culture. Now, of course, I had to move around a lot because due to my background, but I'm well adept and well aware. And when my parents and grandparents would go speak, people could automatically pick up the accent,
Accent,
and people
right.
were asking, where are you from? Are you sure you're from the US? Are you sure you're not from the Caribbean
The
or
islands,
something?
yeah.
Yeah, because it's that you can pick up that dialect and you can pick up the way that we speak.
Yeah. So when you boom. We, prior to starting this actual interview, we talked about some of the. I said that New Orleans is the most African place outside of the Gullah Geechee Islands or Geechee Gullah Islands, and some of those things we talked about. The jambalaya, right, derives from the jollof, West Africa. That rice combination. The gumbo. I didn't realize you guys had gumbo also, but yeah. So the gumbo. And when you just said that good, or is it just the word good, or is it the fact that they repeat things twice?
So when you say the word, so very good. They don't have the word very good. So when you want to say very good, you say good.
Good.
And that's where that comes from. So when
Okay.
you say very good, it would be good.
Okay. Well, I don't know. So I was trying to make a connection, whether it was just because New Orleanians have a thing of saying like, "Oh, man, it's cold," or I guess
Yeah,
so instead
yeah.
of saying very cold,
Yeah,
or
very
yeah,
cold.
yeah, okay, I see, definitely, and the accent thing. The Gullah Geechee accent is quite unique. It's a little more. Yeah, it's a little more Caribbeanish sounding than the New Orleans, but everyone knows that New Orleans accent. You can hear it kind of
Yeah.
anywhere. So it's fascinating these connections that we have in terms of it's a connection to the continent, really,
Mhm.
right? And you
Yeah.
said Gullah may come from Angola.
Yeah,
Do
or
you
the
know that?
Gola people in Liberia.
Well, do you know the name of the Louisiana State Penitentiary?
No, I don't.
It is called Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola. Why is it called
Oh,
Angola?
wow.
Why is it called Angola? Because it was a
Angola was
plantation. It was a plant. The actual space where this penitentiary is. It was a plantation before it was a penitentiary, and the majority of the enslaved Africans on that plantation came from
Angola.
Angola. So they named the city, and then they named the plantation after. Isn't that something?
Yep.
Isn't the devil tricky? You gonna name a plant
Mhm.
the prison?
Yep.
Yeah, but
Speaking of that quick thing, I just want to tie that actually back to Liberia. So
yeah.
there are actually many towns in the U.S. named after Liberia. If you've actually gone in the state of South Carolina, there is a black town known as Liberia, South Carolina. There's
Okay.
also in the state of North Carolina called Liberia, North Carolina. So
Mm.
there's a lot of states that are named or black towns named after Africa that we don't know or we don't talk about.
Yeah, there's out in Alabama. It's
Africa
called
town.
Africa Town. Yeah, a friend of mine called him Huggy Bear. He's a poet. He's from Africa Town. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, now what kind of shirt is that you have on?
I have on my South African shirt. I got it when I was in South Africa.
I mean, so okay, so now you're at the largest HBCU. I'm going to double check that, brother Jabari.
Check me wrong. Everybody will tell you A&T is the HBCU.
All right. No, but you're at this HBCU, you're studying, and now you
Aggies abroad. Aggies abroad.
all right, brother. So you're studying and you decide, man, I want to study abroad. Tell us how did you end up in South Africa?
So I made it clear that I wanted to go study abroad when I realized I had the funds to go study abroad. And I knew from the get-go I was going to study in Africa. I didn't look at any other place. I'm going to study in Africa. And it was either I was going to go to Ghana, I was going to go to Gaborone in Botswana, or I was going to go to South Africa in the University of Johannesburg. So looking at the prices, I realized, okay, I can actually go to South Africa and live decently with the scholarship that I had because I received a scholarship, so I was able to basically have my tuition and all of that covered. So when I realized, oh, I can not only go to South Africa and enjoy South Africa, but it's within my financial means.
Mm.
And I've always wanted to go to Africa, and it's like destiny happened. I remember I always used to love geography back in the fourth grade. And I always remember when I looked in the geography map, I looked specifically at South Africa. I was 9, 10 years old. And I would always look at that and said, I want to go here. I want to go here. And
Mm.
then 10, 11 years later, I actually go there, and I actually ended up enjoying the time of my life.
So that was your first time on the continent?
Yes, it was. Johannesburg was my first
Wow.
place on the continent, as well as my father. My father also went with me to make sure I was settled and guided, and that was also his first experience going to the African continent.
And he's Geechee Gullah?
Yes, he is.
Wow. So tell me about the first day when you arrived in Johannesburg. Think back, place your, transport
I
yourself.
remember. I remember. So we had gotten off the flight. It was 14 hours. We had went from Atlanta straight to Johannesburg, and I remember getting off the plane. And fortunately, my dad had connections, so we were gonna stay with someone that he knew who was also working in pastoral service because my father worked in a similar area around that. So I get off the plane, and I remember I told my dad, I said, Dad, we need to convert all of our money into rand. We don't need to walk around with dollars. We need to convert our money into rand. And I kept telling him, let's convert. So I remember I went and I converted some of my money into rand because I knew I needed to get rid of this
Yeah,
because you're not going to be able to use the currency in South Africa. So
right.
I converted some of my money. Dad was not for sure. And so whenever we needed something, occasionally he's like, okay, I need some more rand. And I was like,
Yeah,
yep. I knew I needed to convert.
yeah,
So I ended up going to where they were staying. And that's when it really hit me. I'm actually on the African continent, and I'm actually in a different environment.
yeah.
And we spent the night at their house. And what's really crazy about it is that was actually when I went to South Africa, literally the very first day that I went to South Africa. That was when I heard that Kobe died. Like
Oh,
literally, I remember getting up and I remember seeing on my phone that Kobe died. And I was like, wait, what are y'all talking about? Like, I just got here and this is the news that I'm hearing.
yeah.
And so that's really the first day when I arrived in Johannesburg. I converted my money, and then I ended up being able to see the setting of Johannesburg, and then I ended up going to stay with um a friend that my dad had known. Now we were not in the city, we were on the outskirts, but
Okay.
that's how the first day went.
Okay. So now school starts. And you're a student. First, tell me what's that like to be a student or like an exchange student? And secondly, how were you received by the other South African students?
Yes, so it's very different. It's not being I came in with a mindset, oh, okay, this is America, they got good education. So when I go to South Africa, especially seeing the grading scale, I'm gonna be good. And reality hit me real quick when I was in this area. Fortunately, there were other exchange students, and there was also some South Africans that helped guide me. And those two sisters, they really helped me get around for the first couple of days, and I still talk to them to this day.
Mhm.
But it's really different because I'm an American student. There was another American student, but I
Mhm.
was the only American student in engineering. So a lot of South Africans actually said they never had seen an engineering exchange student from the States. So when
Wow.
I pull up and I say I'm from the United States, people asking me, why'd you come to South Africa? Well, out of all places, why did you choose South Africa?
Mhm.
And I would explain to them, I've always wanted to go to the continent. And
Yeah.
so, with that being there, people want to know how is life like is in America? How are you dealing with some of the issues? Because they are aware of some of the issues that are happening in the
Yeah.
States.
Yeah.
So that's really me getting familiar with the environment.
Mhm. So were they accepting of you? Were they?
They were very accepting of me. They did pick up my accent, but they were very accepting. They were willing to talk to me. We had great conversations. I'm a very talkative person, so I like to approach people as well, get to know them as well. I got to know a lot about them and their culture, what ethnic group they're from. A lot of them that I have were Zulus, Xhosas, Swanas. I have some Zimbabweans. I have some Congolese friends. I had a wide variety of friends, and they really got me acclimatized to the South African culture.
Definitely. So did I always say we find it a lot easier to talk with South Africans and communicate with South Africans because the cultures are very familiar. And they have like watched a lot of American TV. They know like a lot of American music. Did you find that to be the same thing also?
Yes, so there was a lot. I didn't know there were a lot of similarities in South Africa that were found in America. So I stayed at UJ at APK, which for those who don't know, South Africans know that's Auckland Park. So for UJ, there's 4 campuses. You have APK, you have or Auckland Park, you have Button Road, APB, Dormfontein, and then you have Soweto. I was staying at APK. So right across from me, I could literally walk. There was a McDonald's right near the campus.
Right, right.
I go into the stores in Pick and Pay, and I see they got Skittles. They got all these American foods. They had KFC. They got Popeyes. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of similar American culture that's found in South Africa.
Yeah. Also, let me ask you about the infrastructure. So this is your first time on the continent, and I know a lot of times folks think there's dirt roads and it's villages or whatever have you. Describe Johannesburg, the city.
Johannesburg, I wouldn't even compare it to Charlotte. I would say it's New York. It is the #1 place to be where APK was. You can literally see the downtown area and you can see the skyscrapers. You can see everything. Johannesburg is busy. There's a lot of people. People are moving. So Johannesburg, Jozi as they call it,
Jozi, yeah.
is very busy. And
Yeah.
make no mistake, I enjoyed it. I really wish I had a chance to go to Bloemfontein, but I didn't get to have a chance to go to Bloemfontein. But
Yeah.
yes, the Johannesburg, the city is live, is active. There's so many things to do. As a student, if you chose to stay at the University of Johannesburg at APK, you literally have access to what you need just in the surrounding area that's within walking distance.
Wow.
In the campus plaza, they have a barbershop. They got places where you can get school supplies. They have places where you can get something to eat. They got Pick and Pay where you're able to get some groceries.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, and for those who think, I had to get in reality that Johannesburg serving sizes are really small. I had to get used to that because I thought when they meant a large, I'm thinking American large. I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking medium. But as I got used to it, I'm like, okay, this is how they do stuff, so let me adjust. So
Yeah.
everything was within means. I didn't really have to stress about, oh, where am I going to get stuff? How am I going to get around? Because
Yeah.
everything was right there for me.
Right. And I think that's the ease of transition of Johannesburg. And that's why I think for a lot of African Americans who are thinking to relocate or who have not been to the continent and want to try it, South Africa is the place to start
Mm-hmm.
because you can, there are other places that are very developed, Kigali, maybe Accra or whatever have you, but South Africa and Johannesburg in particular. Well, no. South Africa itself is going to give you that real ease of transition. Things are going to be real
Mm-hmm.
familiar. They talked the other day on one of our videos about pricing. You're not going to have to haggle with someone, go back and forth and argue about a price. Prices are listed, the
Yes.
stores is,
Mm-hmm.
it's
It
such
was
familiar.
easy. You just go in, you pay, and you get out.
Right. So did you make it to Mabanang to go out and party? You're a college student. I know you try to go party.
I'm actually not a party person, so I didn't go too much partying. But I had to. I made sure not to go too far off because I made a mistake, and I suggest all international students, please make sure you got international phone service. Please make sure you got it because I pulled up in South Africa with no internet, no data, running on Wi-Fi, and ended up going with my friends. We were out and I decided, okay, I'm gonna go hang out at this particular location, at this
Yeah.
particular club or particular location. And I ended up having no data, no Wi-Fi. So I end up getting lost, and I'm by myself. And this is
Oh,
near midnight, near noon. I have no idea where I'm going. So fortunately, and this was just by just a good luck, good happening. It
yeah.
was I was just standing there, and a dude touched me, and I remember he says, "Are you from the States?" And I said, "Yes, I'm from the States." And I kind of was like, "Okay, what is he trying to get?" He was
Yeah.
actually from the States, and he had been there.
Oh, okay.
So he calls an Uber for me, and I'm able to get back to where I was. Now
Yeah.
I don't. Now, of course, my friends they got my back, but I didn't have any Wi-Fi. I mean, I didn't have any data and any Wi-Fi, so I
Yeah.
couldn't get in contact with them. So I'm kind of like, yo, how do I navigate the situation? So
Yeah.
that's why I was like, I'm gonna sort of stay on campus, stay around the area, not go too far out, just in case if I need to communicate, if I need to
Okay.
go somewhere, I'm able to people know where I'm at, and I'm not just wandering all over the place.
Definitely. Well, I thought you were about to talk about the phone bill. So this was not in South Africa. In 2009, our we went to my wife and I went to Tanzania, and we were there for she was actually there for 3 months. I was there for about a month or whatever have you. It was our honeymoon slash she was doing some HIV/AIDS research. And yeah, I was using the phone like it was like I was in New Jersey somewhere and calling. So I get back home and AT&T, because I did call AT&T and I told them, I said, hey man, I'm going to be out the country. I need an international plan. And I don't know if they did. So they had it marked, but for some reason it didn't register. So I get back home and I get a phone call saying like, your phone service is going to be disconnected. You owe like if you do not pay half of this bill now, and the totality of the bill was like $10,000, and they was asking for 5,000. I was like, I'm gonna have to cut it off, bro.
Yeah, I mean that's how like I tell people. Like I'm telling you, if you are interested in studying abroad in South Africa or studying abroad in general, but especially in South Africa, please make sure you have your data plan in check. Or
Yeah,
if you're gonna get there, make sure you hit MTN or you hit Vodacom and you get yourself a card or a new phone. Please
yeah,
do
yeah.
that, please,
So
because
so
you
what
will.
was So here's a question, because there may be somebody watching who's at Dillard University, that's my university, or who's at Xavier, or who's at Howard, who may be at Hampton, and they want to know, well, what's the process like to go and study in South Africa? What's the visa like? How do I
So
go
the
about doing that?
visa process, it took a long time, and I was determined. To illustrate just how determined I was, I would walk to the mail to the post office to pay my money order. Since I didn't think I would walk to the post office to get my money order, I would walk because you have to pay your fee in money order to get the visa. I would walk to go get a background check or get any information I need for passport information to the downtown area when it was cold, just as it was approaching wintertime. That's just how serious I was. But
Wow.
it's a lot of work. You have to have the acceptance letter from the university, and you have to have the symbol on it. They have to see that. You have to have all your medical information. So that includes getting a physical evaluation, even sometimes X-ray evaluations. You got to make sure you have the financial means. So you got to provide a financial statement that you can stay here over this time. You have to fill out the form that says, okay, this is where I'm going to be staying at the university. They have to know who the university's assistant is. They have to know what program you're going through. So I went through ISEP, so I could provide that. And you have to, if necessary, go to the embassy. Now, when I went to the embassy, they said I could have mailed it, but I wasn't for sure. So I had to drive up to Washington, D.C. and hand it in to them for them to process it. Now it came not too long, maybe like about 7 to 10 days, but that's the process. Start early, start early. Please do not wait till the last minute if you want to study abroad because it's gonna take you time.
Okay. Okay. All right. So it is a process. Tell us about the people, right? So I know you were mainly hanging with, I guess, students. So what was that like? hanging
So
on
most of the
campus?
students, most of the students I actually hanged out were the locals. So South Africans, people from Johannesburg, also some people, well, mostly from people from Johannesburg, and they were very friendly. They were very welcoming to me. They helped me understand the school system because the school system is different in South Africa. It's not a very American like. So you have a situation where you have 50% of your grade is semester, and then 50% is the final exam, and they take the two averages, and that's going to determine whether you pass or not. If you and the benchmark is 50%, and people are saying 50%, oh, that's easy. Y'all, 50% is a C. 60% is a B, 75% is an A. Just so y'all know, it's really hard to get a 75 on an assignment. The South African system grading system is really stringent. It's not, you're not going to be breezing through classes like you do in the States.
Yeah.
You have to do tutorials, which counts for 10% of your grade most of the time. So a tutorial, what people don't know, it's like pop-up quizzes. So you gotta go to tutorial once a week, and they might give you a tutorial test, and they put you on a spot right then, right there, and you gotta answer it. So the students really guide me on how everything works, how everything is adjusted because they were familiar with it. And so that's what really told me to get into the mindset that I have to study hard. I have to change the way that I think. I can't think like I'm in the States. I have to think this is South Africa. This is how
Right,
their
right.
school system works, and I have to adjust to it.
So the critical skills list, I believe civil engineering and all that stuff is on it. So are you planning on returning to South Africa or
Yes, I've talked to many of my brothers and sisters still there that I do plan on returning in the future once I get the experience, you become a professional engineer, maybe go to grad school. That I really want to go back to the continent because there is a lot of opportunity. And talking to some of my brothers and sisters who they tell me they graduate and they don't have a job, or it's difficult for them to get those job opportunities. To know that I come from the States and I do have resources at my disposal, and I can go and create opportunities or bring in a new site that they may not know or they may not have experienced, to me is something important. And that's how I look at it.
yeah, you gotta, I always say it's about building bridges and closing those gaps, and there's an exchange that can take place, that something that you can take from the South African people, the South African system can benefit you
Mm-hmm.
here, and something that we have here can benefit our brothers and sisters in South Africa. And as long as we start building that exchange, man, we can start building this Pan-African dream, a
Mm-hmm.
little by little. And I think it's important that you come from an HBCU. My critique
Facts.
of HBCUs has always been, I went to Dillard and we had a Center for Black Jewish Relations,
Yep.
but we didn't have a Center for Black or African American relations.
Mm-hmm.
We had a Center for Japanese Studies
Mm-hmm.
at a HBCU, but we didn't have a center for African studies or continental African studies.
Mm-hmm.
So my critique of my critique of HBCUs is that many have not taken advantage of the opportunity to connect to the continent. So that's why I think it's very important that you came from an HBCU and you have
Oh,
connected.
I made it clear when I was a junior in high school that I was not going to anywhere but an HBCU.
Yeah.
And there was a point where I was like, I might not be a civil engineer. I might have to go into this other field because I'm not going to. I made it specifically clear I'm going to an HBCU, and I ended up getting the opportunity to go to North Carolina A&T, and I'm so glad A&T believed in me, and I love that school with all my heart.
All right.
And to understand the connection, I did a recent video on TikTok. Like I said, I'm on social media, so I like to give new information or information that may not be known. A lot of African Americans, and I know this because I'm a huge history savant, so I just love history, even though it's not my major.
Mhm.
African Americans have close ties with South Africa that goes farther than just the apartheid era. Many of us think, oh, we're connected because we experienced similar situations with Jim Crow and apartheid. No, it goes way farther back. Um, African Americans have been in South Africa since the 1780s. There was a group of African Americans who were tradesmen, who were sailors, who were adventurers who had been living in South Africa at the time. You had an African American by the name of Hubert Yankee Wood who opened up a hotel and a restaurant in South Africa, and this was before the Civil War. So we're talking about the 1860s. You had an influx of African Americans in the country who were spreading the idea of Ethiopianism with the African Methodist Church, Episcopal Church, and it was so they were so scared, the white South African government, that they banned African Americans from entering into the country, and they even deported African Americans who were there, or they kept them literally on a case-by-case basis until they could deport them back to America, because they saw African Americans as being a threat to white supremacy, because they saw African Americans as being able to epitomize Black excellence or racial uplift. So there's always been this strong connection between African Americans and South Africa. And even after apartheid, there was, I think you've heard about it, Blacks Without Borders, where they went to South Africa and wanted to sort of help build that new South Africa while chasing that American dream. Right. So, we need to really hamper on that. Man. Not just we've been through Jim Crow and apartheid, but we married each other. Example would be a Zulu man, Manakane Kele. I can't click right exactly, but he was a Zulu man and he married an African American woman, and they ended up moving to South Africa, where he taught Christianity and taught technology, and they met at Hampton Institute. Right. So
Mary Makeba and Kwame Ture.
Nkrumah, they were together. So we really need to understand that our connections go deeper than just, we went through similar struggles, but we've always had a fascination with one another.
And listen, it goes deeper than that, brother. At the HBCU, we did a video on this channel about gumboot dancing and its connection to Black Greek letter fraternity stepping, right? So when you see gumboot dancing, and I'm sure you saw it if you go to Soweto around Nelson Mandela's house, there was a little group of brothers out there doing the gumboot dancing. I think even in the VA waterfront, I saw some gumboot dancing. But if you see that, that's the mother and father of stepping, right? Jazz music. So you talked about those sailors going into Cape Town, right? There were African American sailors, and let's go back. There was the Dixieland Jazz Band, born here in New Orleans. This white band's music actually made it. They say some African American sailors brought this record to Cape Town, and then all of a sudden, jazz becomes a very, like, you have Miriam Makeba, you have Hugh Masekela, and all these great jazz musicians that derived from South Africa, playing this jazz music that comes from New Orleans and from Buddy Bolden. Here's a quick fact about Buddy Bolden. I work for a hospital. I work for the Forensic Mental Health Hospital, right? Wow. Buddy Bolden is buried on the ground because he was schizophrenic.
Oh, wow.
So when you talk about the father of jazz music, listen, imagine this. The father of jazz music, Buddy Bolden, was a schizophrenic. And when you think about jazz and the freedom, in mental health, they talk about disorganized thought content, right? Things that do not go together. When we're speaking, and it's word salad, just thoughts that are so
it's just speaking.
Yeah. And that is what you think about when you think about, if jazz music was words, it would be disorganized thought content, but it was just so beautiful the way it had been put together. What else? There's so many other connections that we discovered as we were doing this. Oh, right. There's the, Mardi Gras is coming up here in New Orleans.
Yeah.
There's the I don't know if you're familiar with the Zulu Mardi Gras parade.
Yeah.
But then somebody else reminded me, now the Zulu Mardi Gras parade is about 100 years old, but somebody also reminded me in New York, there was the Zulu Nation.
Zulu, the Zulu, there was a baseball team that preceded the Harlem Globetrotters. That had
they had the Zulu name? Wow.
Yeah.
So African Americans and South Africans have had this strange connection for very long, even though most Black Americans identify or derived from West Africa. It is just something about South Africa that we have had this connection that is quite amazing, man. So before we go, tell them about your YouTube, tell them about your TikTok. How can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can subscribe to the BAIO Afrikstan channel. Like I said, we're primarily Liberia driven, so I talk a lot about Liberian issues, Liberian facts. I got different series, interviews. TikTok, I do the same thing. I just posted a video talking about African Americans in South Africa on TikTok. You can follow me on TikTok at change_Liberia_narrative. And yeah, YouTube BAIO Afrikstan. You can follow me on my regular Instagram, Jabari_legacy boss. And you can get in contact with me through email as well if you want to, or through TikTok or through social media. So that's really what you can get in contact with me with.
One last thing, you know, this channel is dedicated to African Americans and South Africans. If there's someone interested or saying that they want to go to the continent, or they want to go to South Africa, what advice would you give them about going? And yeah, what advice would you give them about going?
So my advice would be make sure have your expectations set. Like make sure your expectations are real and not unrealistic. Make sure that you understand that this is going to be a new experience. It's not going to be directly from your past experiences. Like I was in the US, you got to be able to adjust. You got to be able to be flexible, be open, be willing to talk to people, be willing to share your culture, share their culture, and let them share their culture. And also make sure you educate yourself about the country. Don't come say, I want to go to South Africa because, oh, Cape Town looks beautiful or Johannesburg looks beautiful. Say, I want to go to South Africa because I've been studying the country, some of the people, the Zulus, the Xhosas, Pedi, Sesotho, and I want to get ingratiated in that culture.
Absolutely, bro. That's wonderful advice that you gave, man. So we thank everybody for tuning in. This has been a phenomenal conversation. I mean, we talked about everything from Liberia to the Geechee Gullah to South Africa to jambalaya and gumbo. Now, you know, that's a big old mix, a gumbo conversation, I guess we could call it, man. So thank you very much, Brother Jabari. And everybody, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. Man, we got some good stuff coming up on this channel. Bam, bam, bam. It started off today with Brother Jabari. Bam, we got another interview tomorrow. Bam, and then we have a very special interview on Thursday. Well, I don't know if all this stuff coming out at the same days, but I mean, just stay tuned. All right, you guys have a good one. Be blessed.